So thank you all so much for joining us for the history of the Ouija board. Explore the history of the Ouija board, its various uses throughout the ages, and its past and present reputation. And this is all led by Shannon Sylvia, who's the author of Paranormal Unwrapped. Sylvia is a popular paranormal investigator who was a season 1 cast member of Ghost Hunters International on the SyFy channel and has also appeared on an episode of Paranormal State on the A&E network. Her book, Paranormal Unwrapped, explores the business side of ghost hunting, whether popular television shows are helping or hindering the paranormal research, and how close the scientific community is in proving the existence of ghosts. But tonight, she's not here talking about the book, which she did for Tewksbury a few years ago. She's here to talk about the history of the Ouija board. And I again want to thank the Friends of the Tewksbury Library for sponsoring. So all 120 of us who are watching live and the many more that will watch the recording, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Shannon for joining us here tonight. And Shannon, you can just say a few words, say hello. Thanks for being here.
I'm going to say I'm quite nervous because this is the largest audience I've had in a really long time. Robert, I met you a few years ago with my first presentation on paranormal photography and how to debunk photos and what might be real, doing some audio there as well. So thank you for having me yet another year. Hats off to you in the library. Thank you. So we're going to get started tonight with a presentation on, just like Robert said, the history of the Ouija board, the ins and outs, the bad reputation, and where it is today. So please snuggle up with some popcorn, make yourself comfortable, and we'll let it begin.
Always say goodbye at the end, so shut the door to the other side. Never use a Ouija board in your home to avoid negative spirits from inhabiting your home. You gotta play sober, guys. Maintain control during the session, end it if it gets too aggressive. You must create a positive atmosphere with a prayer or smudge prior to your session. You might even surround it with salt to keep the evil away. When finished, keep the planchette away from the board so to stop communication and the possibilities of letting a spirit in when it's not under your control. William S. Reed entered the toy business in 1874, co-founding the New England Toy Company of Leominster, Massachusetts. Now, I have to say, I am born and raised in Leominster, Massachusetts, and I'm so freaking proud of this. Anywho, the original business lasted about 18 months. Reed had been bitten by the manufacturing bug. He continued to invent, patent, and manufacture toys, eventually being successful enough to purchase a building on Summer Street. In 1879, he also constructed another building the following year. In 1881, he took on a partner by the name of Charles Dresser. Together, they built a stock company by the name of W.S. Reed Toy Company in Leominster. They invested $25,000. By 1891, the company had done pretty well and was shipping its novelties and game boards, including the Ouija board, all over the world. As operations increased, they expanded again in 1891, buying the Leominster Furniture Building. I remember this building myself. At the same time, the Ouija board had recently entered the amusement market by taking it by storm. The W.S. Reed Toy Company followed their lead, and in May of 1891, they began manufacturing their version of what they call the Espirito board. This came before the Ouija board. On January 5th, in 1892, they registered the Espirito, patent number 20,566, yes, as a trademark. The mark described it as a toy resembling a planchette, but on further review, appears to resemble the Ouija board even more. The Ouija board Novelty Company of Baltimore, Maryland, has agreed to this. In May of 1892, just 4 short months after their trademark was registered, the W.S. Reed Toy Company sent a letter out to the trade announcing that the Espirito just couldn't compete with the existing Ouija board. They ceased production of the Espirito board, directed anyone looking for talking boards to the Ouija board novelty company. More likely, the Ouija board novelty company wrote a threatening letter to them or filed some kind of infringement against them since they held the patent originally. A winning strategy employed by the Ouija novelty company on the Northwestern Toy and Manufacturing Company of Chicago, Illinois. In May of 1892, just 4 short months after their trademark was registered, the W.S. Reed Toy Company sent a letter out to the trade announcing that the Espirito just couldn't compete with the existing Ouija board. They ceased production of the Espirito board, directed anyone looking for talking boards to the Ouija board novelty company. More likely, the Ouija board novelty company wrote a threatening letter to them or filed some kind of infringement against them since they held the patent originally. A winning strategy employed by the Ouija novelty company on the Northwestern Toy and Manufacturing Company of Chicago, Illinois. The Ouija board was born on February 1891. A Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania toy and novelty shop displayed the first ever Ouija the Wonderful Talking Board. Sales boomed in a Pittsburgh toy and novelty shop, describing a magical device that answers questions about the past, about the present, and future with marvelous accuracy and promised never failing amusement and recreation for all classes. A link between the known and unknown. The board sold for only $1.50. Around 25 million boards have been sold to date. It's a flat board with the letters of the alphabet arrayed in 2 semicircles above the numbers 0 through 9. The words yes and no in the uppermost corners. Goodbye is at the bottom, accompanied by a planchette, a teardrop-shaped device with a small window in the body. We've all seen it. It's used to maneuver around the board. A few people place their fingertips on the planchette, ask a question, and watch dumbfounded as the letters might be able to move from letter to letter or number, spelling out actual words or just complete gibberish. The material of the board is started as a solid piece of wood. However, over the years, it became particle board or cardboard. Back then, advertising was kind of hard to come by. Usually everything was in print in catalogs or posters on storefronts. So in the early 19th century, they were marketing the board as mysterious and interesting. It actually had to be proven at the patent office before they were allowed a patent. Believe it or not, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But scientists have labeled the Ouija board as mysterious and a link between the known and unknown to this day. The real history about the Ouija board is just about as mysterious as how the game even began. Ouija board and a friend of mine, Bob Murch, has been researching the story of the board since the year 1992. Good guy, by the way. When he started his research, he said no one really knew anything about its origins. We don't know how many years it went back. We don't know who really came up with the idea. It kind of struck him as odd because he said for such an iconic thing that strikes both fear and wonder in people in American culture, how can nobody know where it came from? People in America towards the end of the 19th century were obsessed with spiritualism, which of course is speaking to the dead. Mediums, for instance, it had been around for years in Europe, but it really hit America pretty hard around 1848. Then came along the Flock sisters who claimed they could receive messages by spirits banging on the walls and answering their questions. Spiritualism was working for Americans. It was compatible with the Christian dogma, meaning one could hold a seance on a Saturday and still be okay to go to church on Sunday. It was an acceptable, even wholesome activity to contact spirits at seances through automatic writing and table-turning parties in which participants would place their hands on a small table, watch it begin to shake and rattle. They all declared they weren't moving it, of course, just like modern times. The movement also offered solace in an era where the average lifespan was less than 50 years old. Women died in childbirth. Children died of disease. Men died in war. Even Mary Todd Lincoln, the wife of the venerable president, conducted seances in the White House after their 11-year-old son died of a fever in 1862 during the Civil War. She also tried to reach out to her husband after he passed. Spiritualism gained people in droves, desperate to connect with their loved ones who had already passed away. In 1890, Charles Kennard of Baltimore, Maryland, got together a couple of guys, investors, to invest in his Kennard Novelty Company to exclusively make and market these new talking boards. The men included Elijah Bond, who was a local attorney, and Colonel Washington Bowie, who was a surveyor. None of them were spiritualists, but they were all keen businessmen, and they The 1910s, the 1920s, with World War I and the crazy years of the Jazz Age and Prohibition, America witnessed a surge in Ouija board popularity. It was so normal that in May 1920, Norman Rockwell illustrated a painting here. It was actually on the cover of a very famous magazine, and it depicted a man and a woman with a Ouija board on their knees, having an actual session. More and more people were resorting to the boards and less to mediums. In 1944, a single New York department store bought 50,000 of them. In 1967, the year after the Parker brothers bought the game from the Fold Company, 2 million more boards were sold, outselling Monopoly. Ouija boards even offered a literary inspiration. In 1916, Pearl Curran made headlines when she began writing poems and stories from the spirit she was communicating with, named Patience Worth. More and more poems and novels coming out of the woodwork from people using the Ouija boards. So the Ouija board was pretty non-threatening until about 1973 when the movie The Exorcist came out. You know, it scared people in theaters, all that pea soup and head spinning and, you know, all the stuff that was brought on by Reagan, who was 12 years old, peeing in the middle of the hallway because she was possessed by a demon. She played with the Ouija board. Shouldn't have done it by herself. Anyway, for at least 10 years afterwards, no joke, the movie The Exorcist actually changed the fabric of pop culture. So overnight, Ouija board became a tool of the devil, and for that reason, a tool of horror writers and movie makers, and it began popping up in scary movies from then on. Almost overnight, Ouija became a tool of the devil, and for that reason, a tool of horror writers and movie makers. The board began popping up in scary movies, usually opening the door to evil spirits, people hell-bent on ripping apart young girls in dorms after using the board. Following years saw the Ouija board denounced by religious groups as Satan's preferred method of communication. In 2001, in New Mexico, it was being burned in bonfires. So were copies of Harry Potter and Snow White. Christian religious groups still remain wary of the board, saying that there's scripture denouncing the communication with the spirits, and this comes from the Catholic Bible. In 1999, 700 Club host Pat Robertson, I've met him, by the way. Yeah, when I was 7. So anyway, he declared that demons can reach us through the board, even through the paranormal community. So pretty much boards have crappy reputation all across the board, no pun intended. In recent years, the Ouija board is yet popular again thanks to economic uncertainty and the board's usefulness. The hugely popular Paranormal Activity movies, both 1 and 2. Rizzoli in the Isles was another paranormal TV program. Breaking Bad even had an episode about the Ouija board. Castle. Numerous TV programs, reality programs that may or may not have included me. But you also have the mall feature. Like, Hot Topic is a store at the mall where goth girls want to gather around and buy out all the Ouija board bras and underwear. And, there's even apps for Ouija boards. Yes, there's an app for that. So moving forward, Hasbro has licensed the rights to make a classier version. Even in 2012, there were rumors that Universal was in talks to make a movie about it, although Hasbro has refused comment on that. But you can see the progression of the Ouija board. After the 70s horrifying thing, now it's starting to sneak back into history. What you're seeing here is the iWay. You probably never heard of it. My followers might remember this from a long time ago. Back in 2010, I came up with the idea of creating a device that would measure finger pressure while users are actually in session with a Ouija board. My friend and really good, talented researcher and scientist, Mitchell Silverstein, created a prototype for me to make this all happen. With my initial studies with friends and family, I was able to convince to join the board. I got consistent baseline readings. The scale read 0 before we placed our fingers lightly on the planchette. We recorded a number between 0.8 and 0.12 ounces of pressure. When they were told to move the planchette around as if it were to spell something out, the reading on the scale was 8 to 10 ounces. I brought my prototype to a conference that I was attending in Asheville, North Carolina. I asked the audience if anyone had ever used a Ouija board before. Many raised their hands. So then I asked the people who thought it was full of crap, keep their hands up. Well, there were 5 people. I asked all those 5 if they would volunteer for an experiment with the Ouija board. They agreed. So I took them into another room. I made a makeshift Ouija board using plastic tablecloth and a Sharpie. I wrote down yes, no, and all the letters and numbers associated with the Ouija board. I laid down the planchette that I named the iWay in front of the participants who were laughing and snickering with each flicker of the fluorescent lighting above. They finally settled down and started asking questions like, is someone here? Just basic, simple questions we would all ask. To all of our surprise, when the planchette began answering their questions one by one, there was some sort of horrific but magical look on their face with a bunch of no ways and oh my gods. As the iWay was in flight, putting their fascination aside, all I could care about was the weight reading on the scale. It was 0. 5 people using the planchette as it was moving around. No finger pressure whatsoever on the scale reading. Scientists can blame our energy causing our fingers to make the planchette move or tip a table. But here I am, a nobody in northern Massachusetts, proving that the planchette doesn't need a finger pressure in order to work. A big thank you to the Tewksbury Public Library for giving me the opportunity to see this, and thank you for each and every one of you that attended this presentation online. Take care.
All right, so I'm going to pop back in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Shannon, let me see if I can find you. And I'm going to ask you to unmute, and I'm going to ask you to start your video. Let's see. And so, folks, as we're doing that, if you have any questions for Shannon, please get them into the Q&A. If you have any comments for Shannon, please get them into the chat. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to go to the Q&A first. MS asks, I may need to leave early. Will I get a recording of this? Well, yes, you will. You will receive the email with the recording tomorrow morning. Lois wants to know, Shannon, where does the name Ouija come from?
The name Ouija comes from a session with the Ouija board, actually. One of the sisters of the investors, Helen Peters, used the Ouija board, and out came the word Ouija when asked what the new name of the board should be. So it's not a derivative of French and German for the word Ouija, meaning we or yeah. It's actually just a word the board came out and said. And when they asked the board, what does it mean? Then the board responded back with good luck.
So Tammy asked a similar question. Patricia wants to know, what was the scariest incident involving a Ouija board?
Oh God, there are so many. So, I don't know. I mean, I would have to say I was 21 years old at a party at my brother's house, and it was one of the first real times I ever really used a Ouija board. And so I sat down with one of my coworkers at the time, a young kid. He was probably only about 7 or 18 years old. And he's like super scared to use the session, to use the board. And he's trying to convince me not to. And he's all hesitant. So we sit at the board, and out came ours. Oops. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. A police officer friend of ours had joined in the session. So now it's 3 of us. So we asked the board, actually, I don't know what we asked it, but something happened where the board responded back with Jeff, Jody, Love, dead. And so one of the participants, his name was Jeff, the police officer, and that was around Halloween. That was on Halloween. And he presented his fiance, Jody, with an engagement ring on Christmas Day, and she declined it, saying that she was no longer in love with him. So nobody would have known that. That was crazy.
So an anonymous attendee asks, have you ever visited the Ouija board museum in Salem, Massachusetts?
I have not, and I do want to go there. Unfortunately, it's not one of my very best places to go unless I'm gift shopping, because let's all be honest, it's crazy down there. It's like New Orleans. But I do know about it, and I have actually tried to purchase a Ouija board that someone on eBay was selling as a purchase from them. So now I know just to go straight to their website.
Christine asks, just to confirm, did people use Ouija boards for literary works?
Absolutely, and that was part of the presentation. Maybe she missed. Pearl Curran was a girl from the late 1800s that would use the Ouija board, and the spirit named Patience Worth would come out and literally spelled out an entire novel, a bunch of poems and a novel. So after Pearl Curran was doing this, and she published this award-winning, beautiful literary works from Patience Worth, a lot of more people were coming out of the woodwork and doing the same thing. In fact, there is a connection to Mark Twain, as a matter of fact. Somebody did a session, and they claimed that it was Mark Twain that came out and did all the literary work for him.
So an anonymous attendee says, thanks for this presentation. It was very interesting, and wants to know, Shannon, do you still use the Ouija board? And if so, what for?
I've thought about it a lot. I have not used it. I had a friend that passed away in July, and I thought about trying to contact her by myself. And I'll adhere to all the rules that I said in the beginning. Why would I? Just because I want to see if she would come through. I've had a lot of friends pass away that I'm just wondering if they'll come through. So I am Catholic. I was trained with those thoughts in my head that using the board is bad, but the other half of me knows that under the right circumstances, you can do pretty good. So I'm on the fence about using it again, but I have a feeling in my lifetime, I definitely will.
Jane says, is the board response generally from someone you know or from some random spirits?
We'll never know. I'm sorry. I wish I could answer that. So there really is no way to tell. Again, I'm kind of just going back on the Victorian times where for decades and decades and decades, everybody used these boards and there were no problems until the movie The Exorcist came out. So once The Exorcist came out, everybody had the thought in their head that these instruments of communication with the dead were awful. I mean, I'm sorry, like before The Exorcist came out, there were no problems. Nobody had a single qualm about it. But once the movie came out, then it got a bad rap. So yeah, I have to remember myself that it's all Hollywood that made it so negative.
Edward says, Harry Houdini debunked many mediums and seances.
Yep.
Did anyone ever try to debunk the Ouija board?
Well, scientists, yes, in the past have done that, and that was also past the part of the presentation. So I'm sure when it's uploaded, everything's going to go smoothly. Scientists used robots, scientists used human subjects, scientists used pretty much everything on Earth. But the one thing they didn't do was what I invented, was create a gadget that actually measures finger pressure on that planchette. So how can scientists say that it is us and our energy and our vibes creating the planchette to move, and our very, very, very light finger touches when it's actually not that true? And I wanted to say, I actually have the original Ouija board planchette right here. This is the first device that we ever actually experimented on. And all it was a scale with little pads on the bottom. And my friend had custom cut acrylic to match a planchette. So of course we came out with an even better one. But this is where all this came from, is where my ideas were.
So someone wants to know, an anonymous attendee asks, would the library ever consider adding a Ouija board to its library of things? And I think that's a great idea. I will look into that. We already have about 100 board games, so why not a Ouija board as well?
Thank you
An
for
anonymous
that.
attendee wants to know, how would the board know how to spell in different languages? That's what would make me think that is propelled by people unconsciously.
Super, super awesome question. And not a lot of people know a second language unless you're in Europe or other countries. So I can't give you the exact answer for that, because then I'd be a know-it-all and then I have no proof of that. But I honestly think that that spirit that's coming through did speak that native language, and they're just coming through. But there really is no proof to debunk this.
Yeah. An anonymous attendee says, why would someone need to touch the planchette? I think that the spirit could just move it on its own. What are your thoughts?
Well, that was part of the scientific research that scientists had done. And when I invented the iWay device, it does measure fingers pressure. So when you had a bunch of skeptics sitting at a table, very lightly pressing the planchette, we got a reading as to how heavy that was. When the planchette was actually moving, it was 0 weight pressure, 0 from 5 people putting their fingers on it. So it's actually really moving by itself. I saw them fumbling, like trying to catch up with it. And I've been involved in many sessions that have done that, where the planchette's moving so fast, you can't even put your fingers on it. And I think a lot of you have experimented like that as well.
So Jane and Andrea have questions about the rules. So Jane, you will get a recording, so you'll be able to read those rules again. But Andrea wants to know, who compiled the rules that you showed at the beginning of your talk? Where did you get those?
Great question. That would be William Fold's marketing people. They put a piece of paper in there. This wasn't the Espirito board that came out first. But once the board was being manufactured in masses, they put a piece of paper in there with the rules. So so many people throughout the years, even myself, believed that those were the rules. But again, rules, just like the finger pressure, can't be debunked. Can't be the rules. How can you prove those are the rules? So I always just recommend people, though, like, just do it safely. If you do sit at the board, you're 17 years old, you're with all your friends, don't demand that Satan make a presence in front of you, because that really is opening a portal. that's stupid. And I know we all did it when we were kids, but you don't want to just be blunt like that. You don't want to talk to evil spirits or conjure them up. They very well may come through.
Good advice. We got a few more questions and then we'll go to the chat where I think there's more questions as well there. So an anonymous attendee wants to confirm, so it's possible for just one person to use the board. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Okay, so question about the rules. Nancy asks, where did the idea of the board come from and how did they know how it would work?
In my research, I found out that it could have been used in Japan many hundreds or thousands of years ago. Again, there's not a lot of proof out there. It's maybe some inscriptions on things here and there. But honestly, in Europe and the United States, there had been no documents ever found before the Espirito board, before William Fauld's images. There had been no actual documents with that prototype, with that board created that we know of.
Yeah. So now I'm jumping into the chat. I did note that, I would say 95% of those slides worked really well, but there was one slide, I think, where the audio cut out a little early. So yes, people are pointing that out. I do realize that. Yes.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. Let me see here. We have folks saying hello, some of your fans. Larry says the Disney series Agatha All Along featured a Ouija board prominently in one of its recent episodes. One of your fans asks, why does Parker Brothers also make the board? They said in Salem they were made there. So what's Parker Brothers' involvement?
Parker Brothers was involved in it, and that may have very well been in the part where it blipped out. Yes, so it had gone from the Folds to the Parker Brothers, and now it's Hasbro, or it's the other way around. It had changed so many hands, probably about 5 different hands since it was created.
Christine likes your sweater.
Thank
Larry asks, so Ouija boards were popular at college back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Is Ouija boards still popular with today's college kids?
I would think so, because they're still making sales. It's not the #2 selling board game anymore. A lot of board games have taken its place, but they're still selling Ouija boards. And that was part of the content I had to edit out because there's so much to say, so many dates and so many things to know about the Ouija boards, but you have to kind of put the important stuff out there. But the board still sells. I mean, they're still being manufactured to this day with the 2023 manufacturing label on it. Yeah, I mean, it's impossible for me to know personally what those sales are, but I would hope that it's in college. I mean, I do have a number of friends who have college-age kids, so they'll report back to me that they caught them in a session or they heard stories or whatever, but good question.
Let me see here. Marianne wants to know, have you personally received messages when you use this that you can validate for yourself? So I know you said you were thinking about using a Ouija board recently, but in the past when you've used them, have you gotten valid information?
Yeah, it was a simple question in the past. I asked the board how many people were currently residing in my house. Not a lot of my friends knew that there was a breakup in the family. There used to be more people living there, but the Ouija board came back and said 2, which was very correct. So it was a simple question, stupid. It could have been any answer and it would have, but I mean, throughout the years, and I must have done 100 sessions with the Ouija board since 2008 when I was featured on television, and so many sessions, but validation is there a lot, but so is the gibberish. And so is the Ouija board kind of whizzing around and not spelling anything out, but validation is and very well can be there for you.
Let me see here. One of your fans asks, what do you do when you're done using it?
Me personally, I do just say, thank you for the communication. You are no longer to communicate with me any longer unless I ask you first. It's just like faith. It's putting the intention out there, how powerful our minds can be when it comes to that. Hi.
You can keep going. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, there are no, again, I don't believe in the rules. I think that was just a marketing ploy. I don't believe you have to separate the planchette. I've never done that, and my head's still on straight. I made sure of it a couple weeks ago. And nothing bad as far as demonic possession in all my times using the Ouija board. Again, probably 100, if not more times.
One of your fans wants to know, have you tried using artificial intelligence, AI, with the Ouija board?
No, I have not, nor would I know how, but if you have any ideas, reach out to me.
There you go. Jane says that this was very interesting. She thanks you.
Thank you,
Another one of
Jane.
your fans says, I've seen on Kindred Spirits that negative spirits were connected with someone playing with the board, opening the board.
Yeah.
So does playing with the board open portals?
Depends on the person using it. Again, it's all the intention you set at the beginning and at the end. Again, using a Ouija board in the beginning and saying, may a demon come and be present and answer our questions, that is opening up a portal. Just the simple words of saying it. Yes, there's no proof of that, but there have been so many experiments with mediums that can speak with spirits and possible other entities on the other side. They come back with information. This is just information I download and read on the internet. So just be careful with your intentions. Start the board off with just, hi, I'm Shannon. Please just a good clean spirit, nothing bad, nothing evil, please. Just the intention, and then end it that way.
So another fan says, I'm surprised they made a pink board for little girls.
Yeah.
It would definitely be unsafe for them to play.
Whew. Well, that's American marketing for you folks. I don't agree with it because it can get scary for little girls. I mean, I was 20, 21 years old using it for the first time, and I was terrified. At the end of that session where it said Jeff, Jody, Love, Dead, the planchette just whizzed off the board, whizzed across the room like 10 feet. And we didn't do it. So this kind of thing can terrify little girls, but marketing the board, glow in the dark, and oh God, the pink Barbie one and all that, I don't agree with as far as a marketing choice, but it's out there.
So Denise says, having sat in mediumship circles in the past, information given should not be general, i.e. your mother says she sends love, versus your mother's specific name calls you by a pet name or gives you specific info only you would know. Sometimes we want to believe so much that we will fill in the blanks. So that's
that is true. That is very, very true. I will say that I sat on a session years ago with my friend Mike, Katie Boyd, demonologist, and her medium partner, Rebecca Boyd. And we were in Lunenburg, Massachusetts at the Harley House bed and breakfast. And that session went on for like 3 hours. It was insane. Long story short, the board started spelling out a name, which we wrote down, started spelling out, tell mama I love her. We wrote it down. Something about May A. Gallagher School, which I personally went to junior high school at. It was naming facts. And we ended up finding out that he was a teenage boy that died in a car accident. And not only did it spell these facts out, but as the board was moving around, we got EVPs of it as we were recording it live. So you could actually hear whispers, very good quality, like no doubt about it. You could hear what he was actually saying while the board was moving. It's crazy.
Christina says, my grandmother told me every board came with its own spirit or its own demon.
Yeah, maybe in her head she thought so. Maybe she found out facts to prove it by use. I don't personally believe in that. That would be kind of like if you manufacture a Ouija board and it somehow comes with a soul. I don't know how it could possibly just be limited to one spirit. Usually for me, with my past experiences, it's been like one spirit per session. And my sessions could include 3, 4, 5 different spirits that have spelled their names out.
Let me see here. We're winding down, folks. Last call for questions. Rob notes that Parker Brothers was bought out by Hasbro. So that's what that means.
Okay, thank you.
Jane says, what's the most important thing we should know about using a Ouija board? So if you had to narrow it down to one thing, what would you say?
I would say probably the most important thing to me anyway is setting those ground rules. Again, just putting out happy thoughts. Ask to speak to a spirit that has passed away, a human spirit. That's what I do personally is I want to speak to a human spirit. That way you're kind of, again, just your thought, your intentions can kind of make a boundary between the other worlds. So, and then end it politely. Thank you for your time. Please do not communicate with me any longer. It's as easy as that. I think that's the most important thing. Otherwise, oh, and use a piece of paper and a pen, write down everything, every letter it spells, and it even helps to record it somehow. There's plenty of opportunities for us to be able to do that now.
Shannon, you're Shannon. So one of your fans says, my dad used to make the boards when he worked at Parker Brothers. It's pretty cool.
Wow, okay, that is cool. And if you know me, reach out, because if he has an old one, I will go through all lengths to get one. I do have a collection of boards here in the house. I have had people in the past send me boards, but I'm looking for specific ones. That is quite interesting, and thank you for sharing that with me. That's cool.
Someone says, my mother, who was Catholic, would flip if we brought one into the house.
Yes.
Leslie says, I have contacted a spirit that told me where his grave was located. I found it with directions, and I was able to confirm that it was true.
See, nothing bad came out of that. You probably made his day.
Let's see. I don't know if this is related to the Ouija board or not, but Rob wants to know, are you familiar with the book, The Siren Call of Hungry Ghosts by Joe Fisher?
I am not, but that could have been part of my research when I had to edit certain things out. Was that book actually written by a spirit through a Ouija board? Because there were a bunch of them.
So Rob, let us know in the chat. Someone says, thank you for answering. Amazing presentation. Jane wants to know, why did you stop using the Ouija board?
I stopped my husband's not that crazy about them even being in the house. A little old fashioned. He is a little older than me. But I'm blaming you. I stopped for no reason, just because I have not done a paranormal investigation since 2011. There was too many charlatans out there that I didn't want to associate with. So I kind of just took a step back, and I've been living pretty happily ever since. But I'm not against trying again. So that's another presentation.
There you go. Someone asks, are Ouija board threats most likely just someone trying to trick you or get a rise out of you?
There's no proof of evidence on any of that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't tricksters out there. There might be a bored spirit that's just flying on by that wants to jump in on the session. I've seen it all. I can't say for sure what your sessions spell out for you and what they mean. Nobody can for sure. But again, record it, write it all down, and maybe someday it'll make sense to you.
So Courtney asks, what was the funniest response you've ever received from a Ouija board?
Oh boy, I have to think back. I don't remember, but I know there was one or two. I'd have to go back to all the recordings of the board sessions we had way back then after 2008. I do believe spirits can have a personality. Like I tell people all the time that don't believe in ghosts, if you die and you're a ghost here floating around in the United States or wherever you're from, Dublin, Ireland, or Florida, what kind of personality is your ghost going to be? Are you going to be mean? Were you a mean person when you were alive? Would you be angry and malevolent? Yeah, if you were a jerk in your current life, your existing life. So I think these spirits are just simply reflections of who they used to be with their same personalities.
Right. An anonymous attendee, speaking of funny, wants to know, have you ever asked for lottery numbers using the Ouija board?
Yes, not successful.
That's right.
I've tried.
LH says, when I turned 18, it was a rainy day, and my friends and I just created a Ouija board out of paper. It was quite a frightening experience, and we all believed none of us had actually done anything on purpose. Till today, I don't know what to make of it. Oh, well, LH, thanks for sharing your story. Okay.
Well, I can say to that, Ouija boards can be made out of any medium. Like I mentioned earlier, I took a Sharpie and a shot glass and a plastic table cover, and I made a Ouija board that actually worked. So back then, all the old-fashioned thoughts from our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, that it was just bad to, you got to burn the board, or there might be a spirit attached to it. No, you can make a board on a piece of paper, and it can be very successful. So there's no, it's just old wives' tales. That's all.
So Ruth asks, when you say that you should say that you want to communicate with a human spirit when using the board, does that mean would it be possible to contact a pet that died? Can you contact
boy,
non-human spirits?
I have never thought of that. So would your dead cat spell out meow? That's a super funny question. Never thought about that, but I don't know. I've never received a meow or a woof on a Ouija board session personally. Sounds like a good TV show though.
So the Siren Call Hungry Ghosts investigation book is actually about dangers of communicating with malevolent spirits. So
A
not
lot of authors
Ouija.
wrote a lot of things back in the day. I mean, pick a doorknob and they probably wrote a book about that doorknob. So there's no doubt in my mind that there are a lot of opinions floating out there about what to do and what not to do.
An anonymous attendee is going to wrap us up, it looks like, with just a warning. Make sure you follow rules for safety and say no to any negative spirits.
Yes, and we covered that, but yes, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. That's why you close it properly. I just put out what my intention is. Hopefully you have your own intentions. But with what I've been doing for the past 20 something years has worked for me.
So folks, let's give Shannon a big virtual round of applause for a great presentation and Q&A session. Folks, look for an email from me tomorrow with a link to the recording, as well as information about some other upcoming paranormal programs that might be of interest. And when you exit the Zoom, make sure to take the feedback survey. But before we close it, Shannon, do you have any last words for the audience before we wrap it up?
You guys had so many great questions tonight, and I am honored to have you see from, coming in from so many different places. I will be posting the link on my Facebook page tomorrow once Robert has wrapped it up. So you'll be able to see a prior session of this, as well as all the answers and questions that we've gone through tonight will be saved in there. So I just want to say thank you all. You've had great ideas, great questions, and this has been really enjoyable.
Yeah, great job, Shannon. A lot of people saying nice things in the chat. I'll make sure to send those your way, as well as the feedback survey results. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their night. Happy Halloween season, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.